This guy took the lives of 4 students and really thought he can get away with it because he was getting a PhD in criminology. His name is Bryan Kohberger. He's 28, living in Pullman, Washington, and socially, he is not okay. He stays right across the state line from the University of Idaho, and that was not a coincidence, but we will get to that later. For now, just know he picked that location on purpose. Anyways, Bryan was obsessed with crime and not in a normal way. When he wasn't in class studying for criminology, he was spending his free time trying to figure out how to commit a crime and not get caught. And I'm not exaggerating. He literally posted an online survey asking former inmates how they picked their victims, whether they planned it, how did they cover it up, what tools they used, and what mistakes were made. And while allegedly planning this entire thing, he had applied for an internship with the local police, claiming he just wants to help analyze the public safety data, when really he just wanted to study how cops work so he could figure out how to never get caught. And then one night, after months of studying how to get away with murder, he decides it's time to test it all out. He picks this house on King Road, and we don't know exactly why he chose that one, but it is where 6 students from the University of Idaho lived. Some people think he chose it because it was in Idaho while he lives in Washington, meaning that if anyone ever suspected him, then Idaho police would have a much harder time trying to investigate someone from across state lines, and that would buy him just enough time to disappear. So Bryan continues with the plan and starts stalking the house, figuring out who lives in which room, who parks where, what time do they get home, who stays up late, and which lights stay on the longest. He even memorizes the floor plan, like in detail. And I don't know why, but the thought of someone knowing your house better than you do, and eventually, after tracking them long enough to know their routine better than they do, he picks the night he's going to destroy everything. November 13th, 2022, he pulls up at around 3:30 in the morning in a white Hyundai Elantra. And just like he expected, the lights are still on, so he doesn't park. Instead, he loops around the block once, and then again for the next 30 minutes. It's almost like he was waiting for the exact second they let their guard down to go in. Around that same time, Xana is on the 2nd floor, awake in bed, scrolling through TikTok. She gets hungry and decides to order DoorDash. At 3:59 a.m., her food gets dropped off at the front of the house. But as the driver's leaving, they see something or someone. It's Bryan circling the house again, and the Dasher gets a very weird feeling, like that gut deep instinct that something is off. She doesn't say anything and just leaves immediately. A minute later, Xana walks out to grab her food. She comes back inside, and then all of the lights in the house go off. And that is exactly what he was waiting for. At 4:07 a.m., Bryan pulls around to the back of the house where it is pitch dark and parks. He gets out of the car while wearing an all-black face mask and gloves while carrying an edged weapon. He walks up to the 2nd floor sliding glass doors, pulls it open like he already knew it'd be unlocked, and steps inside. He moves through the kitchen quietly like he knows where everything is, which he did. He then heads to the 3rd floor and walks into Maddie's room. But what he doesn't expect is that she isn't alone. Kaylee is in there too. They're both asleep together in the same bed, but that doesn't stop him. He pulls out the knife, the one that he had hidden in the sheath of his hip, and attacks him right there while they're sleeping. Meanwhile, Xana's downstairs. She just walked into the kitchen, but then she notices the sliding glass door is cracked open. And then she hears these heavy, repetitive thuds coming from upstairs, and I can only imagine she's just standing there completely frozen. Like, why is the sliding door open, and what the hell is that sound? She starts walking towards the stairs, and somewhere along the way, she either sees or hears him right there in the hallway. Maybe she saw the weapon, maybe the blood, maybe just the look in his eyes, but whatever it was enough to make her run. She turns and bolts back to her room where Ethan is sleeping, but Bryan chases her down at full speed. He follows her down that hallway straight into the room that she thought would protect her. And somewhere in that chaos, he drops the sheath to his knife. That one mistake will destroy everything for him, but he doesn't realize that just yet. He storms into Xana's room, and what happens next we'll never fully know, but we do know this. Xana fought for her life. She had defensive wounds. She tried to stop him. She tried to survive. But Bryan overpowered her, and then he turns to Ethan, who was likely asleep, and takes his life too. Now, this wasn't part of Bryan's plan at all. He was not expecting anyone to fight back. And for a second, he actually sits down on Xana's chair to catch his breath. A few seconds later, he gets up and walks towards the kitchen, but what he doesn't know is that someone else in the house is awake. Dylan, one of the roommates, starts hearing these weird noises. She cautiously opens her bedroom door just enough to be able to peek into the hallway, and she sees him. She freezes, doesn't scream, doesn't even say a word, she just stares, trying to make sense of what she's seeing. But the only thing that sticks to her were those dark, bushy eyebrows and those evil eyes. She shuts her door, locks it, sits on her bed, and immediately starts texting her other roommates to warn them, but no one's answering. Eventually, Beth, who's on the first floor, wakes up and answers. Now both of them are panicking, and at some point, Dylan musters up the courage to leave her room and go downstairs to Beth's room. But as she walks through the living room and turns her head into Xana's room, all she sees is a body on the floor. Freaked out, she immediately runs downstairs into Beth's room, and the two of them lock themselves in there for the next couple of hours. They both fell asleep and woke up later on thinking maybe it was all a dream, but they were not prepared for what came next. And look, I know people judge them for not calling 911 right away, but honestly, unless you have lived through a moment like that, you have no idea what you will do. Meanwhile, all of this is happening at around 4:20 in the morning. Bryan ran out of that house and drove right back across the border into the states of Washington. He wipes his car down, hides his clothes, probably dumps the weapon somewhere, which by the way, they still haven't found. And by 5:20 in the morning, he is back at home in his apartment. He even had the nerve to take this hideous photo of himself the next morning like he is some star of the next episode of How to Get Away with Murder. But back at the crime scene, police had found the knife sheath that Bryan dropped and they send it straight in to DNA testing. But there is one problem. Bryan did not have a criminal record, so when they ran it through the system, nothing came up, which honestly must have made him feel invincible, like, haha, you can't catch me. But what he didn't count on is how petty the FBI can be when you try to outsmart them. The FBI had to get creative, and so they used something that's called genetic genealogy. Basically, they took the DNA and then they uploaded it on one of those sites, kind of like Ancestry, not to find him, but to find someone related to him. And it works. They found his dad, Michael Kohberger, and guess what? Michael only has one son, so now it's not a matter of who did it, it's just a matter of proving it. They trace his car, and it is the same exact white Honda Elantra that they caught on camera that night circling the house over and over again. Then they pulled his phone records, and even though Bryan thought that he was very slick for turning off his phone during the murders, he forgot one tiny detail. He turned his phone off while still being near the house, and then he turned it back on again, still near the house. And for someone studying criminology, that is honestly the dumbest move you could possibly do. But it gets worse. Around that same time, Bryan had driven home back to Pennsylvania for winter break. Meanwhile, the FBI is stalking his every move, which is actually kind of ironic because all of that time he spent stalking his victims, now he becomes the one to get stalked. They watch him wear latex gloves all around the house. They watch him scrub his car, and they even see him throwing out trash in his neighbor's bin so that way his DNA doesn't get in the wrong place. But it didn't work. The FBI dig through that same trash and they find exactly what they need. They run the DNA and boom, it's a match to the knife sheath. On December 30th at like 1:30 in the morning, the SWAT team bust through his front door. They go inside and they find him still wearing latex gloves, and they see him shoving trash into Ziploc bags. He was still over here trying to erase the 4 lives that he took, but finally it's over. He gets arrested, and for almost 3 years he was swearing up and down that he was innocent, and he was saying that the night of the murders he was outside stargazing. I hope someone knocks him so hard in the head he can stargaze for the rest of his life. But eventually he was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. And it kills me that we don't know why he did it, but the main priority is to always remember their names. Maddie, she was the gentle firstborn, her mom's little twin, and the kind of girl who didn't need to say much to be felt. And then Kaylee, the loud, radiant, funny without trying kind of girl, the chaos to Maddie's calm, and her soul sister in every single way. And of course, Xana, the wild child who will literally do a backflip anywhere just to make you laugh, always smiling, always moving, and always full of light. And lastly, Ethan, the oldest to his triplet trio, the protector, the glue to his family, and the one who would notice if you're sad and would just crack a joke just to lift the air. 4 young adults who lit up every single room that they walked into. 4 families who wake up every single day with an ache that never really softens. And their friends who now have to live with the memory of what they saw, what they heard, and what they couldn't stop. Ooh, that part really haunts me. They were just kids and they deserved every single part of their beautiful lives, but then he walked in and took everything.
The order in which things happened just got flipped on its head. With the new documents released, Dylan's updated statements change everything. I'm going to try to do this in an order that it makes sense because the statement, the way it was released, was a little, jumpy, so stay with me here. The first big thing that changes the timeline or the order in which things happen is that Dylan said that she heard Kaylee come down the stairs with Murphy as she was singing and dancing. Now, you'll remember before she had said she heard Kaylee dancing with her dog. She says that Kaylee came down the stairs to the second level with the dog. Here's where it gets interesting. She said she then heard Kaylee take Murphy back up the stairs and say in a very excited, frantic way, "Someone is here." This changes the original account that Kaylee and Maddie were in bed asleep together when Bryan Kohberger started his attack. She says she then heard Kaylee scream. Now, jumping ahead a little bit, Dylan says she thought she heard Kaylee come back down the stairs because the sound of the shoes. In the statement, she said that they all wore Doc Martens, and as you know, they're thicker, heavier shoes, and so she thought that the cadence and the, I guess, impact of the shoes sounded like Doc Martens. However, I believe this was Bryan Kohberger coming down the stairs. Another very interesting piece here that kind of pulls it together is she said that she heard crying in the second floor bathroom, which she thought was Kaylee, but then said it was Xana. Now, when the investigators pressed Dylan on if the girl crying said anything, she said no, but that the male was talking to her, which to me implies that Bryan Kohberger said more than just, "It's okay, I'm here to help you." She then referenced that they had just watched The Vampire Diaries, so this is where her fog and confusion really set in, because she was almost trying to convince herself that what she was hearing wasn't actually happening, but it was. Now, another change in the statements that we hadn't heard before is that she stated that as Bryan Kohberger was leaving, that cylinder that she saw in his hand had a triangular tip. This now leads me to believe that it was 100% the knife that she saw in his hand as he was leaving. She said what further made her confused is that during all of this, that she was calling out for Kaylee and Xana, and she stated to police she knows that Bryan Kohberger heard her in her room and has no idea why he didn't come in there. Now, what do you guys think? I mean, I'm going to unpack this in my next video. This changes everything. What are your thoughts?
Here's the thing about the Idaho 4 case that I just keep going back to. I've listened to so many podcasts and so much of the news about the case, and I just can't stop thinking about this one thing. So he was stalking the house. He was stalking potentially Maddie, but he was probably stalking all of them, even if he was only after her because she was close friends and living with these other people. He knew that there was other people in the house besides just her. He had to have been aware that she had roommates and that there was a possibility of running into them while committing the crime. So I think personally that he went in with the intent to do it to all of them. And I think he thought he was going to do it easily because it was a Saturday night. It was in the middle of the night. They were all probably intoxicated. And he was going to be able to just finish the whole house. But I think that Kaylee and Xana gave him too much of a fight that he didn't want to keep fighting the house anymore. He didn't want to go on with it because they even said that Dylan said that they made eye contact with each other and he just walked past her. So I think that there was something to that. I cannot imagine him not expecting to take the whole house out because he would have known that everybody was there. He would have known that everybody was home and who was at the house. If he was driving by multiple times that day, if he had been watching it previously, there's no way he didn't expect to meet up with one of the other roommates, even if it was in the middle of the night.
So the court has been dropping documents all day, and I'm going to read to you what the first responders found. Now, this is public record, but I'm going to warn you right now, it's very graphic. Upon arrival, I saw Hunter crouching near the entrance of 1122 King Road. There was obviously an emotional distress. I entered through the first floor door, which faces the north towards the parking lot. I announced myself as a Moscow police officer and heard Officer Nunez and Warner respond from upstairs. When I got to the second floor, I saw a female covered in blood in the bedroom in the northwest side of the second floor. I believed this female to be Xana. I looked inside the bedroom Xana was laying in, and it was obvious that an intense struggle had occurred. Xana was obviously deceased. There was blood smear on various items in the room all over the floor. There was blood cast off on the walls in various places, including above Xana's body. Xana was on her back on the floor in the center of the room with her head towards the west. Xana was in her underwear and a long-sleeved gray shirt. Both shirt and underwear were covered in blood. Xana's face and body was covered in dry blood. I could see what appeared to be defensive knife wounds on Xana's hand. There was a deep gash on Xana's left hand between her pointer finger and her thumb. She probably grabbed the knife. A partially covered male was on the bed and also obviously deceased. I believe this male to be Ethan. The midsection of Ethan's body was covered with a blanket. Ethan's head wasn't visible and appeared to be between the bed and the south wall. There was...
Happy Friday, my friends. Y'all, are you ready for more information that has just come out on what was on 163214's phone? You guys, this could be a trigger warning for some of you. I am going to tell you, he was effed up. And I know a lot of people are like still thinking that didn't do it. He's innocent, but these searches have to maybe make you think otherwise. And I want to tell you that these searches come from Heather and Jared Barnhart, who were hired to investigate his digital forensics. Now, these people are experts. They have worked on lots of famous cases, including Delphi, as well as like Osama bin Laden case. So they're not just like Joe Schmoes down the street, okay? I just feel like that's important to say. So let's start out with some of the things that he did a Google search. But before I do that, I want to say this. He worked hard to try to get his Google searches or all of his searches deleted. In fact, he wiped his search history using a data erasing software on his laptop 3 days after the unalivings. And it worked for a lot of information, but did not get rid of everything. I mean, this dude thought of a lot, let's just say that, but wasn't smarter than the experts. So what are some of the things that he looked up? Again, pretty disturbing. He looked up things like home invasions, burglaries, co-ed killers, ape with the R in front of it, the letter R in front of it, aped with the letter R in front of it, forced sleeping, passed out, voyeurs, serial killers, just a few. I mean, listen, I've been known to search Google serial killers myself, but things like aped with an R in front of it, forced sleeping, a little bit bizarre to me. Basically what they said was that everything pretty much that he looked up had something to do with non-consensual sex acts. Now, Kaylee's dad, Steve Goncalves, said that he believes that 163214 had weird sexual fetishes and that he went there to follow through with those fetishes and that he was forced to change his plan when he was confronted by, as we know, Xana. Or really, it could have been that he was confronted by Kaylee, if you think about it, because she was in Maddie's room unexpectedly, so. Oh, and by the way, he was searching all of these terms before the unalivings up to Christmas. So I want to talk a little bit about his phone, what was on his phone as well, before I get into the serial killer information. On his phone, there was also some other disturbing things, including a lot of photos of naked women or women in bikinis only. Now, it's important to note that these were not photos that he took. They were like probably photos that he found online, but these were not photos that he took. Also important to note, there were 0 photos of any of the victims on his phone. Okay, there were also a lot of selfies that he took. Most of them were shirtless, and he was flexing and posing. Yeah. And never once did he send any of these photos to anyone. He just took them for himself. Narcissistic much? And then, of course, I mean, how could we forget this photo, which he took literally right after the unalivings, giving a thumbs up, smiling in his bathroom. This is like one of the worst, eeriest, horrible pictures ever. Ew. Oh, what else was on his phone? Well, if you watched my video from yesterday, you saw that he had in his contacts his parents listed as mother and father, Norman Bates like. But guess how many contacts he had? Take a guess. Now, I don't know if you guys are anything like me, but I get contacts through work. I have old contacts from people that I've known for forever, nieces, nephews. I mean, like, I have a lot of contacts, and I don't even have a ton of friends. 163214 had a total of 18 contacts in his phone. Says a lot. I mean, this man was freaking mean. Oh, what else did he have? Oh, no pictures at all in his phone of any family or friends. Lots of selfies, as I said. And what else did he have pictures of? Oh, he had tons of pictures of his car. Was real proud of that car. Like, a lot of car pictures. Okay, so let's talk about the serial killers. He was freaking obsessed with serial killers, but one in particular. You guys know him? This right here is Danny Rollins. He was known as the Gainesville Ripper. Does he look familiar to any of you guys? Okay, so back in 1990, he unalived and SA'd 4 females at the University of Florida with a K-bar knife. He also unalived 1 male at the University of Florida with a K-bar knife. They were all students there. So 4 females and 1 male during a 4-day unaliving spree. Again, he used a K-bar knife. The difference between him and A-hole is that he actually got the death penalty and was executed in 2006. Finally, the last thing that is extremely bizarre is, like I said, he was obsessed with serial killers. On Christmas Day, when most people are like out, hanging out with their family, having meals together, opening gifts, whatever. I mean, that's a day that like you usually like hang out with family, let's be real. What was he doing? Oh, he was spending hours searching up serial killers. And I'm telling you, there is a list of them, and I'm not going to name them all, but just some. Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, BTK, Betty Lou Beets, Randy Kraft, William Lee. That's just to name a few. So the dude, obsessed. And he also, from November 26th to December 28th, was consistently searching for updates on the Idaho 4 crime. So there's that. All that. I want to know for real if people still think that he is innocent after all of this. I'm just curious. But I also want to know what everybody thinks about this new information that we have found out just today. As always, I love our conversations. I love your comments, even when they're hate comments. So put your thoughts, let's discuss in the comment section below.
We may now know why Bryan Kohberger spared the lives of the roommates of the 4 Idaho 4 victims. It has been a question we have all been asking since the beginning. Why those 4, and why did he leave 2 surviving roommates? Now, all this is according to the new Dateline documentary of the Idaho 4 and Bryan Kohberger. They've even shown new video footage of a car speeding away to the point and so recklessly that they almost hit someone else during the times or close to the times of the unalivings. Here's the most important information and the newest information that they told us in this documentary. Now, whether it's true or not is up for debate. But allegedly, Bryan Kohberger went to the house to unalive Kaylee, and that is where he started. Now, Madison was not even supposed to be there. She was supposed to be there just to show her car, and she was already not living in the house at that time. Now, allegedly, Xana was in the kitchen eating a DoorDash that she had just received when she heard some motion in Kaylee and Madison's room. That is when allegedly Xana went up the stairs to check and see what was going on, where she ran into Bryan Kohberger, where he allegedly chased her down the steps to her bedroom. That is where Ethan was passed out asleep, obviously probably from a large night of drinking. And that is where he unalived Xana and unalived Ethan and actually carved, as they say, carved Ethan's legs. Now here where the other 2 roommates come in. This exhausted the unaliver, allegedly Bryan Kohberger, to the point where he sat down in Xana's room. There is a bloody butt print in a chair in that room. One of the surviving roommates has said that she ran into someone with bushy eyebrows and a mask on. Now, she did not say anything. She did not yell for help. She didn't do anything like that. And so he was most likely just completely exhausted from the other 4 unalivings that he let her survive. There's so much more information from this new documentary, such as some new photos and someone that was interested in Bryan Kohberger but had some weird experiences with him and told that side as well. So if you want a part 2, let me know.
And I believe we just figured out why Bryan Kohberger took the plea deal. In an interview given by Heather Barnhart, the forensic expert tasked with getting into his phone and getting the digital evidence, just gave an interview to People magazine, and what she revealed, shocking. Not only did Bryan Kohberger call his mom, who he referred to as mother, less than 2 hours after he committed the crimes, he was on the phone with her for almost an hour while he went back to the crime scene that morning. Now, this is just my opinion, but I believe that he told her when he got back to his apartment after committing the murders what he did. He then realized he dropped the sheath. So he calls her back as he's at the crime scene looking for the sheath. This is why he took the plea deal. This is why they exhausted all of their efforts in trying to find other people to blame and other suspects, is because he knew she would have to get on the stand and testify to the content of that conversation, implicating herself. So what do you guys think? Am I way off here? As a mom, there's no way that either A, he didn't tell her, or B, was acting so weird that day. When the news came out about Kaylee, Ethan, Maddie, Xana, she wasn't like, it's Bryan. What do y'all think?
If you thought the Idaho murders couldn't get worse, they just did. And I have to give you guys a massive trigger warning for graphic violence and disturbing crime scene details. In fact, if you don't think you can handle it, go ahead and just skip this video. Because honestly, I didn't even want to do this video. I sat with it for a while, but I think that it's important to understand just how much of a soulless monster BK really is. With the gag order being lifted, we just got access to newly unsealed police reports, and what they describe is worse than anything that we have heard before. BK didn't just kill Kaylee Goncalves, he disfigured her. Her face was so mutilated, the responding officer said she was unrecognizable. The report called it a bloodbath. Then downstairs, Xana, she wasn't asleep. She either heard or saw what happened to her friends, and she fought. Police found deep defensive wounds between her fingers from trying to grab the knife, from trying to stay alive. That struggle was intense, and BK didn't leave the house until after he took her life. And there's more. Xana had just gotten food delivered, and the surviving roommate told the police she saw a masked man walk past her door and out the sliding glass door carrying what looked like a package. It might have been her takeout. That's how cold he was, grabbing it as he walked out. Ethan Chapin was found in bed, still partially covered by a blanket. Investigators believe that he never even woke up. This all happened within minutes, and every time we think we've heard the worst of it, it somehow gets even darker. 4 lives taken, 4 families shattered, and now we know just how far this monster was willing to go. Unfortunately, there's a lot more information coming out, so if you do want to stay up to date, I will be covering it no matter how hard it is. Make sure to hit that follow button, and if you feel like dropping something in the comments, feel free to do so.
Here's everything you need to know about Bryan Kohberger and the 4 University of Idaho students that he stabbed on November 13th of 2022. These are the 4 beautiful souls that were taken that night. This is Xana. Xana was dating Ethan, and Ethan was staying over at their home that night. And this is Madison and Kaylee, and Madison and Kaylee were best friends. Ethan and Xana were at a party on campus that night. They arrived home around 1:45 a.m. Madison and Kaylee were also out that night. They were at a downtown sports bar called the Corner Club, and they left there around 1:30 a.m. The 2 stopped at a food truck at 1:41 a.m. to order something to eat, and the food truck happened to be live streaming on a Twitch channel, so there's actual video footage of the 2 girls waiting for their food. Once they got their food, they ended up getting a drive home with someone. Once the 4 were at home, the police were able to put together a bit of a timeline based on events happening on their phone. For instance, we know that Kaylee was trying to call her ex-boyfriend between 2:44 a.m. and 2:52 a.m., and we know that Xana actually ordered DoorDash at 4 a.m. This is the home where everything took place that night. There were actually 5 university students renting this home. There were 6 people, however, in the home that night as Ethan, Xana's boyfriend, was sleeping over. It was initially believed that the 2 other roommates in the home must have been sleeping on the first floor and had slept in. But after affidavits and things were released, we now know that 1 roommate was sleeping on the first floor and had slept through it. But the second roommate was actually on the second floor, the same floor that Ethan and Xana were sleeping on. Madison and Kaylee were on the 3rd floor. The roommate sleeping on the second floor was actually able to give police quite a bit of information from that evening. She actually woke up a few times. The first time she thought she heard Xana and her dog. The second time she woke up, she heard someone say, "There's someone here." She thought it might have been Xana, but police believe it could have been Ethan because according to phone records, Xana was actually on her phone on TikTok at about 4:12 a.m. The roommate also had opened her door a few times. The first time she opened her door, she heard someone crying. The second time she heard the door, she heard a male voice say, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." Around this time at 4:17 a.m., security cameras around the home actually picked up whimpering, a loud thud, and heard a dog barking incessantly. The roommate then opened the door for the 3rd time and witnessed a figure dressed all in black, including a black face mask that covered their mouth and nose coming down the hall. She said she froze in fear initially and then immediately went into her room and locked herself in. The 911 call wasn't made until the next day around lunchtime. It was actually 11:58 a.m. when one of the roommates called. They said they were calling for an unconscious roommate, so they ended up contacting some of their other friends to come over to the home as they were very concerned. Once the police arrived there, it was evident they were not unconscious, and all 4 victims were reported deceased at that time. Police were able to obtain surveillance footage from around the home from that night, and they ended up seeing a white Elantra in the area numerous times. It was actually seen 3 times driving by the home and in that area between 3:29 a.m. and 4:04 a.m. It was then seen again for a 4th time at 4:20 a.m. speeding away from the area. Police were eventually able to trace that vehicle back.
The one thing I've noticed I have not heard that has been spoken about the Bryan Kohberger case is that yes, he went to school for criminology, so he did the classes, he read the textbooks, but he could not plan for his body's physical reaction to what would actually occur to him when he was committing these crimes. My husband and I have actually always been into true crime, and he's a police detective himself, so he's always able to add a unique perspective into cases that we look into together. I actually asked him what Kohberger's body's physical response was during the time of the murders, and this is what he wrote to me. Under moments of high stress, our resting heart rate increases from approximately 90 beats per minute up to approximately 175 beats per minute. This causes several physiological reactions, including vasodilation, loss of fine motor skills, time dilation, meaning time moves slowly, auditory exclusion, and an adrenaline dump. These responses are meant to keep us alive, but can quickly hinder the decision-making process, and in effect, ruin the perfect plan, causing mistakes and physical deficiencies. You have to train for stress. Because humans never rise to the occasion, we only sink to our lowest level of training. After the murders, Kohberger would be experiencing a shock-like reaction. He would probably be shaking uncontrollably. He probably didn't notice or hear Dylan due to the auditory exclusion and tunnel vision. After the adrenaline wore off, he would have been extremely tired and out of breath. His breathing wouldn't be able to keep up with the rapid heart rate, which is why he sat down for a minute. Eventually, panic would set in as he fled the crime scene at a high rate of speed. Let me know your guys' thoughts, and if you have any questions, just leave a comment.